So today's topic is on ambiguous loss. And as I mentioned before, this is a very big topic that all of us experience. And maybe some of us haven't heard of this topic or this term before. I know when I first heard of it, I was like, oh my God, that is what I've been feeling this whole time. And it felt so healing to just even know that this exists. And it's different than other types of grief. I actually made a presentation and it's going to be relatively short. I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, well, hopefully we can all see this well enough. Um, so what is ambiguous loss? It's a form of grief that is very unique and very different. It's experienced when your loved one is either physically or psychologically there. I'm sorry, they're physically there, but maybe psychologically or physically altered from when you first knew them. And it's due to uncertain circumstances. In some cases, it could be a kidnapping. In other cases, it could be Alzheimer's. My mom had Alzheimer's. In the context of ME/CFS, long COVID, and all of those types of very debilitating illnesses, which my husband has, he's had it for 30 years. It manifests as a profound sense of loss, despite the person being alive. And unlike traditional bereavement, ambiguous loss lacks closure. And because of this ongoing nature of this illness, and sometimes the kind of roller coaster of, oh, some days they're better and other days they're not, in some cases, it actually creates this kind of roller coaster herky-jerky effect where you're kind of like not sure where you are and you have to adjust all the time. And you're in this kind of perpetual limbo, right? And so that is challenging in itself. So, as caregivers, we shoulder a lot of this emotional burden of witnessing our loved ones struggle. And we also mourn many kinds of losses. And I've listed some here. There's loss of independence, a loss of control, a loss of the future as you had imagined it, and perhaps as your loved one has imagined it. In some cases, it may be a loss of financial security. There is a loss of the relationship as it once was. So while my husband and I were still husband and wife, the dynamics have changed drastically. There's a loss of freedom, sometimes in sleep and family harmony sometimes. There's a lot of struggle because of that. And there's, in my case, because it's my husband, I have a loss of someone to share chores and other tasks with, such as parenting. I sometimes have described to myself over the years as a single parent, even though I am married. I feel like I'm a single parent with a special needs husband. And I'm just going to be totally upfront about it. That's how I felt, right? That's my reality. My friends and family, they don't experience it. They don't really get it. But you all do. We all do. That's why we're here today. Now, the people with the debilitating chronic illness, our loved ones, also experience ambiguous loss because they have to adjust to some of these same losses and they may have some additional struggles. There's a lot of things that are similar, but some things that are also different. Not only do they have this constant state of uncertainty, they have a loss of their former selves. They sometimes may have a loss of dignity, a loss of mobility, other physical limitations, a loss of the roles they were once played, and sometimes a loss of self-worth. So there's a lot to grieve all the way around. So it's really important to acknowledge these losses. I'll just say for myself, I was like kind of going at it like Wonder Woman. Like, I'm just going to plow right through. I'm going to solve all these things and we're just going to get through this. And I know how to troubleshoot a lot of things, right? And the unfortunate part was I was kind of bypassing my grief by just being so action oriented, right? So, what I was just going to say here is that These, this grief can lead to sadness, depression, anger, guilt, frustration, profound helplessness, sleeplessness, and other physical and emotional problems. So grief is very complex. It's important to identify our losses and identify our feelings and let ourselves grieve. Okay. Don't bypass it like I did, because then you really repress it. And in my case, it came out when it shouldn't. Like then I start yelling at people, right? Because I've been keeping it in for so long. And then it's just like a pressure cooker and it gets released at an inopportune time sometimes, right? I'd also say that why is this grief so strong? Not only is it this multitude of different types of losses that are very complex and very deep, it's also because grief is a sign of deep love. I'm going to repeat that again. Grief is a sign of deep love. That's why it hurts so much. So it is important to really identify the grief and to feel the feelings. But it's also important to not stay in this grief for long periods of time because that really does lead to that depression and being stuck. So I invite you to consider both and thinking versus either or. And what I mean by is, oh, you're either happy or you're sad, right? There is an ability to hold two things true at the same time. Some of you who I've known for a while know that I'm a Zen student. And so there's this concept of duality and really transcending duality. The idea is, again, you can hold two concepts close to you and really feel them really wholly at the same time. They may seem diametrically opposite, but you can still feel them both. So the journey towards healing from ambiguous loss is for both the ill person and the caregiver to do two things: to grieve the life that the illness has taken away, and two, to actually enjoy the life that still continues. Now, again, this may seem diametrically opposite, but I promise you it doesn't have to be. I learned to live this way. So I now want to share with you top 7 strategies for this journey towards healing. And I go into it deeper in one of my group courses that I teach and lead. And so if you're interested in diving deeper into these, we'll have more space and time to do that in this group course, and I can share more details about that later on. But for the space and time we have today, I could just touch upon these at a high level and invite you to ask questions. So one of the first strategies is to name your real problem. Your real culprit that's causing your stress is ambiguous loss, and it's caused by an illness. It's not your fault. It's not your loved one's. So be very clear on that. The second is to let go of what you can't control and to master what you can. So this goes to mindset. And again, I know there's a few people here who've taken my course and have worked with me, and we really talk a lot about this. And if you can let go what you can't control, it's going to really help you. It's challenging to restore what's been lost, but you can find a balance. And there are lots of different ways you can go around doing that. Some people pray, some people meditate. That's what I do. Some people have creative endeavors. There's a lot of different techniques and strategies to try to help you with this. The third strategy is to redefine your identity. I think this is really important, and that is oftentimes we cling to what was. I know my husband does, and he still clings to how he was when he was in his 20s, able to be super active. Like he would bike, hike, all of those things. He was doing martial arts. He can't do any of that. He's in bed most of the day. Um, Clinging to what was, how it used to be, is going to keep your grief frozen. You actually have the opportunity to redefine yourself as someone who lives well despite all of your challenges as a caregiver. The fourth thing I alluded to earlier, and that is to practice both and thinking. It really helps to think both and instead of extremes of either or. So this means balancing two different ideas at the same time, and it can be done. It's actually a lot less stressful than continuing to search for an absolutely perfect solution that, quite frankly, isn't going to happen very soon. Because, as all of you know, MECFS, long COVID, there's not a magic pill that we can take. Not yet. So, what do we do in the meantime? We practice both and thinking. So, here are some examples. I am both a caregiver and a person with my own needs. I take care of both him and myself. I am both sad at my loved one's illness and joyful with my husband. I am both sad about my lost hopes and dreams and happy about some new plans and goals. So, those are some examples of both and thinking. The fifth strategy is to find ways to accept a new reality in your relationship with your loved one. This is part of radical acceptance, which we cover in a group course that I'm going to be covering about ambiguous loss and radical acceptance. So we can dive in deeper, but again, at the highest level, you may find yourself focused on your caregiving role more than your role as a partner, parent, friend, any of those relationships. You may miss that connection that you used to have with your loved one. You may want to consider accepting a new reality in your relationship with your loved one. You can ask yourself these key questions. A, what can you do to accept your loved one as they are right now, instead of wishing they were healthy? Two, how can you resist the urge to compare past versions of them to who they are today? Three, what moments still make us laugh and smile together? Let's focus on that. Another strategy is to seek support connection. So you all are here today. I'm so glad you are. I know when I started this support group 6 years ago, um, it meant the world to me to show up each month, to be in community with other people who get it, other people like me, because boy, no one else really did. Okay. Sharing experiences, seeking advice, and finding empathy in a supportive community can really provide a lot of comfort and validation. It's very healing. And, we can't solve MECFS or long COVID, but we can help each other get through this together. The seventh strategy, I think you probably have heard this one before, but it's so hard to do, and that's to practice self-care. I know that I had a really difficult time with this because who has time for self-care? I'm busy doing all the things, right? But if you're operating on empty, you really run on fumes and then you just collapse. I know I have. I've burnt out. And I've also snapped at my family members. I yelled at them because I was so stressed. And really, when you don't have that self-care, you don't set those boundaries to make time for activities that bring you some joy and those moments of respite, then you just run out of steam and you run yourself into the ground. For those who are on my email list already, I asked last month, I think, if you were interested in an assessment quiz on burnout. And I've actually been spending the past month or two creating it. So it's finally launching this coming week, I think. I'll send an email out to everyone on my email list if you wanted to take that burnout quiz. It's really important that you don't get to that point. And if you are at that point, there are ways to dig yourself out of it. Okay, it's really important. All right, with that, I'm going to close out. Oh, thank you, Charlie. With that, I'm going to close out. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about the support group or anything. All right, take good care, everyone. Bye.